Alright, so I'm really excited to bring you this sort of final review of the Samaya Inspire 2. Samaya do things a bit differently, but the bottom line is, does it actually work? Alright, so the fabric here is called Nanovent, and it is basically twice as breathable as any other single skin tent fabric. And on all the occasions that I have used this tent, in heavy rain, high winds, and on all the other occasions where I've used Samaya tents, and that's actually I have experience of about 5 of them, I have never had an issue with moisture management or condensation. So another aspect of Samaya tents that kind of sets them apart is that they are highly modular. So for example, you can actually remove this vestibule. So once you have the doors removed, then you have the full side of the tent for ventilation or stargazing, and zips obviously open up, and we can roll up the door to get that out of the way. So I'm going to go back a bit now and just briefly discuss pitching the tent. So the tent has 2 poles and they're in continuous pole sleeves, so I always just assemble the poles first. And these poles have on the ends where they go into the pole holders, the last section of the pole is black, so you can easily identify that. So just simply pop the poles through the pole sleeves, and then just push on the poles and pull on the ends here. Pop the poles into the grommets and tighten up the tension adjusters. Stake the tent out, stake out the vestibules, and stake out the guy lines. And one of the things that I will say is, because the tent is single skin, it's just slightly easier to manage. And I've certainly found on the 2 occasions that I have used a tent in pretty challenging conditions that the pitching has been very, very easy. And the fact that it's just a single skin, you know, makes it very, very easy to manage. I mean, this floor, for example, is a 70D floor, so you really won't need a footprint with this tent. And I have managed tents where you have a footprint, an inner tent and an outer tent, and in the wind that can all just get to be a bit of a tangled mess, whereas in this it just simply doesn't, because it's completely the one unit, and simple is always better in my experience under challenging conditions. So a bit of a general look around the features on the inside of the tent here. Obviously I have a completely open door which runs the full length of the tent, mesh for ventilation on both sides, pockets here on the top on both sides, a larger pocket here on the bottom, and an actual gear loft. And I'm 6'1", and the gear loft, you know, I've still got room to sort of sit up without brushing on that, although if you put anything heavy in it, that is going to touch your head. Construction of the tent. Samaya tents are the best build quality of any tent that I've ever tested. You can look to see what tents I've tested. These are definitely the best, and if that means something to you, then this is another part of the reason why you should consider buying this tent. All the taping in the seams is absolutely perfect. Just attention to detail, like a little sort of strip, the same colour as a tent, along the top of the pocket. You know, it does just feel, I've said this before, it does just feel a little bit special. And when I came around here today to put this tent up, as soon as I got it out of the bag, I thought, yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to doing this review, to spend some time in the tent again. Now, I always do like to talk about weather resistance of tents, because for me, I like to camp in challenging environments. And it also means that if you're going to take a tent out and it is maybe windier than expected, you know how well a tent is capable of performing. So I've had this tent out in 30 to 40 mile an hour winds, and it has performed extremely well. I've had it out in a rain warning, where it's rained all night, and again, not a drop of water anywhere. So I think the weather resistance in this tent really punches above its weight. The guy line set up here, for example, with the angle of this guy line, when you pull on this, it just really supports the poles properly. There are some other tents on the market where the angle of the tent is almost parallel to the guy line. So that's the equivalent of the guy line pulling down here, and that then just can't support the pole. But with the actual guy line angle here, it supports the pole, it goes right round the pole, and the end of the tent has quite a narrow profile. So when you're pitching this way into the wind, it is really, really, really strong and super impressive. And I would say that this will comfortably handle 45-mile-an-hour winds. Now, I do want to sort of specifically talk a little bit, I may have mentioned it earlier, but I do want to talk a little bit about moisture management and condensation. You know, so for a single skin tent, you have two things here that are really combating the moisture buildup, and that would be the fabric being so breathable, and that works really, really well, and also the fact that the doors here, you've got full mesh right across the length of the tent, both sides, and that just allows for fabulous ventilation. So on the occasions that I've used this tent, even in a rain warning, when it rained all night, zero condensation, and that's the same of all the Samaya tents that I've used. You know, while there's been lots of aspects about the tent that I've been impressed with, moisture management I've probably been impressed with the most. The tents have just all done so well. Now, in saying that, a tent is a tent, and there can be certain conditions that can catch out any tent, but those are pretty much sort of few and far between, definitely in the experience that I have had with a tent. Alright, so now let's talk about interior space. This pole structure is actually not used by that many manufacturers, or this pole configuration, and I think a lot of manufacturers should use it more, because what it does is it gives you quite, you know, relatively vertical ends in the tent, but it gives you really good height in the roof. You know, a dome tent of the same floor space, you just wouldn't have anywhere near the space and volume in a tent. Now obviously it does make the tent a bit weaker in the roof, but it might be weaker in the roof, but it's stronger on the sides. So unless you've got heavy snow loading, then this tent actually functions very, very, very well, both for space and for strength. So inside, as I said before, I'm 6'1", and I'm now, you know, I'm quite comfortable here in this section of the tent, you know, height-wise. So that's really, really good. And obviously, when I move down into the middle of the tent. However, this is a minimalist shelter for two people. I have a regular, it's actually a long, wide sleeping pad in the tent here, and there's no way I would get two wide pads in this. So it is a minimalist shelter for two, and that keeps the weight down and also reduces the wind profile of the tent, which I think is one of the reasons why it actually does so well in the wind. So I've just got into my sleeping bag to let you see a realistic view of the length of this tent. So this is where I would be positioned. So you can see the sleeping bag very lightly touching the end, but I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. I'll move the camera down so you can see that a little bit better. This is my actual head position, and I have a bit of room here. So I certainly find this tent is perfect for me, and as I said, I'm 6'1" and no issues at all with the length. So at the time of me filming this review on the tent, Samaya have come up with a fantastic offer, and that is 30% off this tent. So the tent costs £700 sterling. 30% off it is a really, really good deal, and that will simply be available. This is 2023 or 2024. This will be available until the end of the year, or while stocks last. But currently, that's a really good offer if you're thinking about buying this tent. Okay, so now just down to my final thoughts on this Samaya Inspire 2. I honestly am biased, but that's because of the experience that I've had with Samaya tents. I'm going to tell you a really quick story, and I tell it with all my Samaya videos, but it's really relevant. I got the Samaya Assault 2, used it with my friend Gary, who has a number of Hilleberg tents. He still has Hilleberg tents, but he then, after seeing the Assault 2, went out and bought one, and it's one of his favourite tents. You know, so if there was anything about a tent that I didn't like, I'm certainly not going to stitch up my friends about it. You know, we both are very passionate about Samaya tents, and we both actually feel that they are a little bit special. And I'm sure Gary will comment here on the video. So if you look down for Gary Nesbitt in the comments, I'm sure you'll see a comment somewhere of what he thinks about this tent and his experience of Samaya tents. So the single skin issue, the single skin idea works really well in this tent. It makes a tent lighter, and it makes it have a smaller pack size, and it manages moisture really, really well, and it also makes a tent very, very easy to pitch, because you're in the combination with a 70D floor, you're not managing a footprint in an inner tent and an outer tent if the conditions are challenging. The volume and space in the tent for one person is amazing, but it's minimalist for two. I mean, it's as simple as that. And as I said, that minimalism helps with the actual weight of the tent, the space, the pack space of the tent, and the tent performance. And this tent, as I've said before, definitely punches way above its weight. It's very, very stable in high winds, and I've pretty thoroughly tested it, up to and around probably 40 miles an hour, and I would say it would go 45, possibly even 50, if the tent is orientated properly into the wind. So I think that its performance, weather resistance wise, is very, very good. The build quality and attention to detail in this tent is second to none. As I've mentioned before, all the stitching on all the seams, the little colour details on the pockets, it's just really, really nice, and it just helps the tent feel that little bit special. So finally, yes, I love Samaya tents, and I really love the Inspire 2. I think this represents, especially with the discount code I'm going to give you at the 30% off, I think it represents tremendous value, and I would thoroughly recommend it.